And we actually had some fucking comments on the video last time.
Yeah, seen that. So I put it in the Q&A section.
We actually got a Q&A.
One of them's Harris, and I know it actually counts. But
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I'll take anybody.
It wasn't you, Seth.
You know, it's you, Seth. I don't care. Anybody. Comment in the goddamn videos. Welcome to Health, Fitness and Success, Episode 3. We actually had some comments.
Okay, welcome to Health, Fitness and Success, Episode 3. This is your podcast guide to winning at everything, podcast of peace. My name is Ben Tormey.
My name is Mark. Hello.
Hi. Yeah, great.
Hey,
good to be back.
Great to be back after, how long has it been? 6 weeks? 5?
No, it's more like 3, isn't it? No,
3 weeks.
Two and a bit.
It's meant to be 2 weeks, but 2 and a bit. That sounds better.
So, shall we start with the Q&A, or should we leave that for later?
No, we'll do that at the end. Just like every,
It's just nice to get some questions for a change, isn't it?
Yeah, it's real nice. All kinds of comments on YouTube. Comments. Right, so the first piece we're going to kick off with is a gluten study that's been doing the rounds on the internet this week. I'll just pull up the link so we can talk about it. It was published on realclearscience.com, and basically the title of the topic is non-celiac gluten sensitivity may not exist. So Ben, do you want to kick off on this one? Yeah,
so basically, if you're paleo, where is your God now? That's the that's the takeaway point. No, I thought this was fascinating. I mean, I don't think this is necessarily conclusive either. I more than anyone else probably would love to jump on this and say, you're wrong. There's no such thing as non-celiac gluten sensitivity. I'd rather wait until there's some more evidence supporting this. But I think it does make a very good point, which is that a lot of people out there are removing gluten and getting a nocebo effect, which we know is happening. There was a recent study done in Australia, and it was on the same idea as this. It was about gluten sensitivity, and people removing gluten from their diets and the reasons why they were doing that. And what they found is it was mainly social influences. So it wasn't people, going to their doctor, and being told, after running some tests that they had sensitivity. It was people consulting with friends, family, and it was this kind of cultural shift towards eating gluten-free that had nothing to do with any actual symptoms or any evidence at all. And this just reinforces the idea that most people who seem to be going gluten-free are doing it for no real reason at all, and they are getting what seems to be a nocebo effect. So in other words, they attribute a lot of negative side effects that they get from, it could be anything, but they attribute it to gluten. So if they feel tired, lethargic, low on energy, it's gluten. And as soon as they remove it, they feel better, but it's all in their head.
Just a quote off the article, I think would be a good kind of point to note out. Bisik noted in a review published in December to the journal Current Allergy and Asthma Reports, consider this, no underlying cause for gluten intolerance has yet been discovered. Moreover, there are a host of triggers for gastrointestinal distress, many of which were not controlled for in previous studies. Generally, non-celiac gluten sensitivity is assumed to be the culprit when celiac disease is ruled out. But that is a trap, one which could potentially lead to confirmation bias, thus blinding researchers, doctors, and patients to other possibilities. Yeah.
That's it, Maine.
That's it, Maine. I thought that was quite an interesting point.
Yeah.
Moreover, there are no no underlying cause for gluten intolerance has yet been discovered.
Yeah, which I think is the point of all of this, which is people have jumped on this bandwagon, and people have been selling products off the back of this without really understanding what's going on. And especially this is going to be a huge market now. I mean, people are willing to pay more for gluten-free foods, which are often, they're nutritionally inferior, more expensive, but people genuinely believe if they don't have them, that something really bad's going to happen.
But wheat's bad, right?
It is, yeah. I've got that wheat belly. Grain brains.
That crop that kicked off the agricultural revolution, so bad for you.
It's coming. Yeah, it's trying to get its own back now. But the thing is, I think we had this discussion ages ago when there was that. We had that argument about autism being caused by gluten and dairy. About the whole, right. And it was the whole point that you can't really, say that it was causal. A dietary intervention, you couldn't really argue that was causal in the improvement, or the very subjective improvement of symptoms in that case.
The point being is, if you try to argue that it's causal, you're going to sound like a dick.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the interesting thing. It's like, again, it's what they hit on here is the nocebo effect, and it's fascinating because anecdotally, I mean, again, going off N=1 samples, there's a family friend of mine who actually all of her symptoms improved after putting gluten, wheat, and other like dairy, other products she'd eliminated back in her diet. So,
damn it, just blowing up my preconceived notions of the world here.
I know, but
with your facts,
just proving things. One sample of one person at a time.
N=1.
Yeah.
Drop everything.
But yeah, I think the other thing is, this was getting out of control with people taking this to extreme degrees as well. I mean, it's one thing if you feel that you might have food intolerance. It's another, like, becoming totally obsessive about removing wheat and grains from your diet. I mean, if you genuinely believe you have an intolerance to something, you have to be more systematic than this. Just removing gluten.
I think I've got a broccoli insensitivity.
Yeah.
I've removed it from my diet for the last year and a half, and I haven't had any negative responses. So I think I might be correct.
No, definitely. It's pretty lethal.
Pretty lethal stuff.
I don't know what the LD50 on broccoli is, but
it's all green and shit. It can't be good for you.
Yeah.
Nothing green is good for you. Right, cool. So here's another article. This one is in www.npr.org. So this is on red wine. Reservoir. I'm so bad at pronouncing names.
Resveratrol.
That's the one. May not be the elixir in red wine and chocolate. So basically, the article goes on to say that although there have been health benefits found in red wine, chocolate, the antioxidant that had been kind of fingered as a possible mechanism turns out may not be the actual mechanism. I just want to bring up that Cochrane study that I brought up right in the first episode that showed that antioxidant supplementation actually had an increased mortality when compared to no intervention. It was only like a 0.3% effect, but it was there. And it was a review of something like 500,000, 600,000 cohort. So, like, the Cochrane studies are like pretty much the gold standard as far as systematic review goes. Yet this that antioxidants are good for you still persists for some reason.
Yeah, it's funny because it turns out you make money off the back of that, doesn't it? So.
Crazy. Nah. Nutrition companies are here for us. They're here for the good.
For the gains.
For the gains. The gains of society and the health gains of everybody else.
Yeah,
so there's no monetary incentive.
So my understanding of this was, that the idea with resveratrol was that it was tied in with the SIRT1 pathway, and stuff like that. So it was, basically improving the functioning of mitochondria. I guess that would be tied in with PGC1 alpha as well. But I didn't really, from my understanding of what I've read of the research, I don't see how you can necessarily get the dose of resveratrol needed, or at least do it in a living human being. Getting it from red wine or chocolate. I mean, it's one thing saying that it might have an effect in vitro, but especially in rats or whatever they've studied. I imagine it would be rats. That they're usually quoting rat studies.
Fat, drunk, happy rats.
Yeah, yeah, but it just seems difficult to then extrapolate that to humans, because there's all sorts of things that you can.
Yeah, that's part of Ben Goldcare's book Bad Science, which is great. If anyone hasn't read it, highly recommend you read it. He basically has a part in the chat in his book called From Petri Dish to Human, and basically he goes from he uses an example of vitamin C. If you inject it into a cell, like a single cell organism, it has a cascade of effects and has these positive benefits. But when you try to extrapolate that up to a human, which is a multi-trillion cell organism, that it is not quite that simple. It doesn't really bear out that something that has a small effect on a molecular level on a system, like a closed system, like a single-celled organism, you can almost bet your bottom dollar that's not going to have the same effect on something like a person. So I think this is like if you look at the biggest killers in the West, stress and heart disease, what does alcohol and chocolate do? Makes you relax. So yeah, my money would be on it's just the relaxing effects of the chocolate or alcohol has on these people's lifestyle that causes the health benefit or the lack in mortality, not the reversible or whatever it's called.
But the thing is as well, I think the problem is we're very quick to isolate individual compounds in food, in what we eat, without taking into account that it might be acting in concert with a whole other, well, like in this article they actually said it might be several polyphenols working together. So another example of that is you look at caffeine. If you isolate caffeine from coffee, you actually cut out a lot of the other beneficial compounds. There's
coffee.
Yeah, like coffee. Yeah, like the taste of coffee. Yeah, exactly. But there's compounds in coffee that mimic acetylcholine, for instance, so you're not going to get the benefit of drinking coffee just by having a caffeine supplement. But it's the same idea with taking a concentrated resveratrol supplement and not having a glass of red wine. Like you mentioned there, a very important point. It's missing the whole context of, having a glass of wine. What is that process? What does that involve? It involves you possibly relaxing a little bit more, enjoying something which maybe tastes nice instead of just popping a pill. Yeah. So like you said, there's all sorts of things there that I don't think are accounted for. So yeah, that's just another supplement we've destroyed again. So.
But if you did want to find someone, see if you could consume enough red wine or chocolate to see if it had, it took enough that you got enough. What's it called again? The
resveratrol. Yeah,
that one. If you got someone to drink enough red wine and eat enough chocolate to see if you could build up enough in the body to actually have an effect, I think that'd probably be a fairly successful study, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna find we'll pay for chocolate and red wine. Yeah, let's have some of that. Okay, so that pretty much covers that. Do we want to do the fat guy?
Yeah,
or the former fat guy.
Fat guy, yeah. So that was the article you sent me about the guy dubbed Britain's fattest teenager. Well, formerly Britain's fattest teenager. He's obviously lost that title now, and he's going to have to work hard to get that back. But
it's going to take some dedication, man.
Yeah, he lost over £235 and claimed that the NHS won't remove the excess skin because he's too fit. So when he started, he weighed about 400 pounds at the age of 16. He started going to the gym.
Some bad gains, bro.
It made some insane gains. But he says he's been denied the surgery to remove excess skin because with the amount of muscle he's added through going to the gym and weight training, he's still classified as overweight due to BMI. So this is another article in attacking BMI. And just a side note here. I do know that when, someone has lost a dramatic amount of weight like that and has got loose skin, that is a very serious issue. Cosmetically, it has all sorts of effects on their well-being. Psychologically, it is a very, serious issue. So not to make light of that whole thing at all, but this is another case of BMI bashing, which I think is being, misconstrued by the media.
Please respect the serious tags.
Yeah.
Just reading through it a bit. To be fair to the guy, like, he's done exceptionally well, and the loose skin does not look good.
No, exactly.
So I might actually be on the side of this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a shame that they would deny him surgery just based off the fact that he was overly BMI limit just because he built muscle. But then, on the other hand, you could stop lifting for a bit, lose a bit more weight, and then get the surgery, and then start lifting weights again.
Yeah.
Rather than complaining about it on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that puzzled me about this article, and the reason why I was hesitant to immediately side with him, was because apparently the Doncaster Clinical Commissioning Group, which quoted here, said that there is funding available to pay for surgery following extreme weight loss. So I don't know whether or not he's pursued that fully. I mean, either way, yeah, I'm fully behind the guy getting surgery for the excess skin because he's done a great job. And yeah, I think it is hugely important to make sure that he, has that just for his own well-being and for his confidence. But yeah, I think the reason I'm hesitant about siding with him completely is bringing BMI into it and saying, well, it's BMI is stupid and the NHS is stupid for using BMI. I just think it's the wrong way to approach it. I mean, yes, they may have made a bad decision in that case, but
if he wanted to start up like a Kickstarter for laser surgery for his tattoos,
yeah,
I'd happily contribute to that removal because they are awful.
It's one of Dumb Dare Tribal Tabs.
Oh, bruh, so Mari. Much Mari, wow.
Yeah.
Alright, cool. Yeah, so that's on doyoueven.com, which is a blog about lifting, I would assume.
Yeah, so...
Lift. Do they even lift?
I don't know. I mean, I would question their journalistic integrity to some degree, but...
Yeah, with the title like doyouevenlift.com.
Yeah.
Fucking misc virgins. Alright, so that covers that. Another BMI, because everyone loves a bit of BMI. Right, next one comes from an even less reputable source, bbc.co.uk. Basically, this was actually quite an interesting one. Endurance exercise interferes with heart rhythm. Crux of it being... although endurance exercise training can have harmful effects on the heart, it is more than outweighed by the beneficial effects. Thanks, Professor. Oh, it was done on mice, was it? I haven't actually read that. Have you read it?
I was hoping you'd read it, to be honest, but we'll just continue on.
We'll pretend we've read it.
Basically, the bottom, the very telling quote they have here is, if the findings are reproduced in humans, they could have implications for heart health in older athletes, but much more research is needed before we could draw that conclusion.
For fuck's sake. So this is a mouse, a British Heart Foundation team found exercise in mice triggers molecular changes in the part of the heart that generates its natural beating rhythm. This may explain why elite athletes have low resting heart rates and more risk of heart rhythm disturbances, they told Nature Communications. That's funny, because I thought the low resting heart rate of athletes was due to increased stroke volume, due to increased left or larger intakes from the left ventricle wall, and also it gives a larger output because it pushes more forcefully. Again, increased stroke volume, which means that each beat is actually more efficient. It pumps out more blood than an untrained heart does, and due to the reduced level of stress for the heart at rest, and that's why athletes' hearts have lower heart rates. But it would be really interesting if that was actually a deleterious training adaptation, and made endurance athletes more likely to die prematurely for something like heart arrhythmia, which would be another reason not to do cardio, which would be fucking awesome.
I mean, yeah, it's an interesting, because I made the same assumption as you about stuff like left ventricular hypertrophy in athletes, and I know there's cases of sudden death in top level athletes, and I don't know to what extent that's necessarily even connected with endurance events either. And I think the problem here is that this is a very strange message to give the public, because most people, the vast majority of the population are not going to be at the level of, extreme endurance events. They're not, yes, people are doing the odd marathon every now and again, or the odd fun run, but it's not the same as being an elite, high level endurance athlete. So I don't know if, even if these risks were real, they would necessarily filter down to the average person who just needs to go and do a bit more exercise.
What you would like to see is, rather than pointing out a mouse study, maybe someone who read this article maybe go and look at some epidemiological data in endurance athletes to see if they had a lower or higher survival rate compared to normal people.
Well, no, because that would have meant that we wouldn't have had to, we wouldn't have had anything to discuss then, because it would have been, could have just read from the article then and made no comment.
Endurance exercise is good, do it.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't sell newspapers. So a mouse study that tells us something about the effects of endurance exercise on mice hearts.
Yeah, sweet. Listen, I'll remember that the next time I go for a run.
Which will be never.
Yeah, never, yeah. So we could do the fish oil one now, I guess.
Yeah, may as well. Please God, tell me you've read this one.
No, I have actually read this one, yeah.
Oh, that's
yeah. The headline of this one is that a popular fish oil study deeply flawed, new research says. So what they're talking about here is that that one of the studies often quoted to help sell fish oil was based on the heart disease rates of Greenland Inuit. Okay, so indigenous population who consume, large amounts of fish oil and omega-3 fatty acids, because they eat blubber from whales and seals, so they eat fish.
Too, Craig.
Yeah. So, but the interesting thing was here that in that study they relied on public health records in Greenland, and hearsay, so they weren't actually reporting any real measurements from the Greenland Inuit. They were just extrapolating. This study that they're talking about is kind of junk on the face of it now. Having said that, the problem here is, the implication is that fish oil is junk. However, there are lots of other studies you can look at which support fish oil. I think most meta-analysis that I've seen shows that fish oil is either, neutral or has a slight beneficial effect. But
totally worth 40 quid a month.
Yeah. I'm not convinced. I don't really see the need for fish oil as a supplement, especially not in the doses recommended by most people. But I think at best it's probably a slight beneficial effect in some cases.
I'm firmly in the camp that it's a waste of fucking time. Here we got N3 fatty acids for fish oil or fish oil supplements, cardiovascular disease outcomes in primary and secondary prevention studies, a systematic review. The studies on the relation between dietary blah 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 blah. Primary prevention of cardiovascular disease was reported in one random controlled trial, in 25 prospective cohort studies, and in 7 case controls. No significant effect on overall deaths were reported in 3 random controlled trials that evaluated the effect of fish oil in patients with implantable cardioverter defibrillators. Most cohort studies reported that fish consumption was associated with lower rates of all-cause mortality with adverse cardiac outcomes. Blah blah blah. The effects with stroke were inconsistent. So it's been shown to have a good effect on survivability of cardiovascular disease. So yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think most of the studies I've seen where it had a really positive effect were on clinical interventions with various sorts of disease states. It in that case, yeah, cool.
Cool.
But like you said, I'm not going to be buying it.
Yeah, I'll save my money. But you could eat some fish.
No, whoa. I'm not eating any food now. Yeah, so this supplement industry, like we said last time, is out there to help us.
Totally cool, man.
It's making these products for a reason.
They're your bros. They don't want your money. They just want you to live a long, prosperous life.
But, actually, another interesting thing on the back of mentioning the Inuit here was that a lot of the idea that the Inuit live in ketosis is also flawed as well, because what they don't account for in a lot of when people quote that is that they actually get carbohydrate from muscle glycogen, because they eat the raw animal, when they eat the stuff they catch, so whales and seals. So they actually get about, I think it was 50 grams of carbohydrate I saw quoted. So, they're making mad gains because they
50 grams of sugar as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck.
So yeah, basically don't trust any studies done on Inuit.
Okay. Why is that? Because they're a disreputable race?
Yeah, I mean, just eating that glycogen.
Eating the whales, man.
Eating the whales, yeah. I love
Save the whales, bro.
I love whales, yeah.
That's so I've heard.
Oh yeah, another one I want to mention quickly was Vibram, the guys who make the funny finger shoes. They're getting sued now.
There's a shout out to one of my friends, Martin Bunyan, one of the early adapters of the Vibram 5-finger shoe, who also coincides with a douchebag.
Yeah.
So, what up, Martin?
I mean, in the interests of full disclosure, I also own a pair.
You did.
But I haven't worn them in a long time. I mainly wear them for comedy value now. Not because I believe the claims which they
trust the Tormney.
Yeah, I don't believe the claims, mainly because they're getting sued for that. So.
What, we're making claims with no scientific evidence?
Yeah.
It's actually on an unrelated note. I was listening to, I don't know if I mentioned the podcast before, but I listened to a podcast called Physio Edge. It's an Australian podcast, and they cover, funnily enough, physiotherapy. And they had a guy on who's basically was like a foot specialist, or his specialization was overuse in runners and ways of preventing things like shin splints and other various things you get from jogging. And he was saying the best way to improve someone's running mechanics was to actually remove running shoes. Reason being that the supported heel actually encourages like a heel strike. Heel strike's okay if heel strike comes under the center of mass, or it comes under the center of gravity, under the center of balance. So if you're striking under yourself, it's fine, because you go through like a bent knee joint and you can support the load. Where it becomes a problem is when you like kind of strike out in front, almost like decelerating in the glide. So if I put my foot straight out in front of me and strike the floor when I'm jogging, what you do is you lock up your talus, and locks up the entire structure of the leg, which means that your hips are just taking that impact over and over again. And that's one of the major mechanisms, not the major mechanism, quite a lot of the bad effects that like enduring like joggers and whatnot get. So he was saying that like getting like either running barefoot if possible, or running with like a very thin sole actually prevented like forefoot striking, midfoot striking, or striking under the center of mass, and improved like the running gait of these people. So that could be a use of the Vibram 5-finger.
So you're saying I should keep a hold of
Do you do a lot of long, slow distance jogging?
No, I don't.
Then throw them out.
Okay, fair enough. I mean,
unless you want to look like a juice bag, in which case put them.
Well, I mean, I kind of do in a way.
Save it for special occasions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much are they getting? 3.75 million. That doesn't really sound like a lot.
I guess maybe for a company like that it is, though, because I mean, I don't know how much they turn over. I'm guessing it's way more than that, but it does seem like a significant amount. Well, I don't know. I guess I'd have to look at their accounts, but I think 3 million's an awful lot. It's more the reputation damage, I would say, as well. That
What to say about publicity?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No bad publicity. So, yeah, interesting. Though. So, if you do own a pair of Vibram 5 fingers, you are officially a douche. It's science. Okay. Shall we move on to the topic of the week?
Yeah, let's do that. So yeah, let's talk about occlusion training, because I've actually been trying that out again after not really trying it properly. I just gave it a quick shot a couple of times.
Were you just shooting up heroin and decided to do some curls afterwards?
Yeah.
You can talk to me about it. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I started on the creatine and then it just spiraled out of control.
As it does.
Yeah, so I thought I'd give it a proper shot and actually follow, a protocol in the literature to see if I could get some mad gains.
So just out of interest, have you been using a tourniquet, or have you been using a cuff?
So
or did you acquire said device, or have you been using it on?
So what I started off was I have some knee wraps which I use for occluding the legs. I have wrist wraps which I use for occluding the upper arm. And I kind of just, adjust the tightness with the Velcro, pulling them tight. I don't have the proper cuffs, so I'm sure that makes a difference, in terms of practical results. But, based on the literature I've seen, you can get away with using wraps, assuming you do it properly.
Yeah, I don't think there's actually anything to say that it matters how you achieve the occlusion. I don't think they've actually got that far into the research.
Yeah,
continue.
I believe the main thing, as long as you are preventing the venous return, that's the main point of occlusion. If you're not doing that, it's not occlusion training. If it's too tight, obviously you're at risk. But yeah, so the protocol was pretty much what I've seen in Jeremy Lerniker's publication. So you do a set of 30, then 3 sets of 15. And in general, the idea is you start off with isolation movements, and you build up your tolerance for the pain, because it's very painful of doing it, and you don't stay occluded for too long. So you take the wraps off after doing your sets, but you keep them on while you're actually performing the work sets. And the rest times are usually about 30 seconds to a minute. So it's actually quite challenging to get through them, especially when I found out you do calves. So I gave the calf training a go with occlusion, and it was one of the most painful things I've ever experienced in my life. I was praying for death halfway through. I mean, I don't know if this is going to translate into gains, but it felt good anyway.
Pretty much like I've got 2 studies here, but we did sit through a talk at the last UKSAA conference, or it might even be 2 UKSAA conferences ago. It's the United Kingdom Strength and Conditioning Association. There was a guy whose name escapes me. It might have been Ben Rice, possibly. That's probably completely wrong. Anyway,
isn't he a powerlifter?
Possibly. This guy wasn't. This guy worked with the English Institute of Sports Intensive Rehab Unit, and occlusion training is something they use a lot with athletes who come straight out of surgery. So, for example, if you come back with ACL reconstruction, within about 24 hours, you'll be on a leg extension with an occlusion cuff doing like 3 sets of 15. They had actually looked at the results over time and actually come up with protocols. I can't remember those protocols off the top of my head, but anyway, it was like 3 to 5 sets of like 10 to 15 reps at very low intensities, like 30, 40% of your 1 RM. And they had actually tried like higher intensity, lower intensity, moderate intensity, many sets, fewer sets, and they'd found that like a fairly, what looks on paper like a fairly moderate approach, like 30%, 40%, 3 sets of 15, 4 sets of 15, was actually the most beneficial way of doing it. And they also found there was like it only kind of lasted for about 2-3 weeks. It's not something you can do indefinitely and just get swoller and swoller. So I've got 2 studies here published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning. First one's from 2009, Lonek et al., and it's written in all caps. So I don't know if I should shout this out. Low intensity occlusion training provides a unique beneficial training mode for promoting muscle hypertrophy. Training intensities as low as 20% of 1 hour with moderate vascular occlusion results in muscle hypertrophy and as little as 3 weeks. Typical exercise prescription calls for 3 to 5 sets to voluntary fatigue with short rest periods. The metabolic buildup causes positive physiological reactions, specifically a rise in growth hormone that is higher than levels found with higher levels of intensity. Occlusion training is applicable for those who are unable to sustain high loads due to joint pain, cardiac rehabilitation, athletes who are unloading, and astronauts. Buzz Aldrin, gotta get swole, boy. The next one's from 2012 September. Occlusion training increases muscular strength in Division 1A football players, so reasonably decent athletes. There's a 4-week low-intensity resistance training with blood flow occlusion, 32 subjects, and they're randomized into an occlusion group or a control group. The athlete performs 4 sets of bench press and squats in the following manner, with or without occlusion: 30 repetitions of 20%, predetermined 1 RM, followed by 3 sets of 20 at 20% of 1 RM. Each set was separated by 45 seconds. The training duration was 3 times per week after completion of regular off-season training. Data collection included health history, resting, blah, 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 squat 1 RM, bench 1 RM, upper and lower chest girths, upper and lower arm girths, thigh girth, height and muscle mass.
That girth.
That's so girthy. The increases in bench press and squat 1 RM, 7 and 8% respectively, upper and lower chest girths 3 and 3% respectively, and left and upper arm girths was significantly greater in experiment group. Occlusion training could provide additional benefits to traditional strength training to improve muscular hypertrophy and muscular strength gains. So I'm hoping during this program they were doing like a proper program as well, in which case it's quite interesting because the athletes did 20% of the 1 RM, which obviously 30 reps isn't going to provide a training stimulus for someone who isn't using occlusion, but a 7 and 8% increase in bench and squat 1 RM versus what though?
Oh, is there no comparison?
No. Because if it's 7 and 8%, then that's not significant.
Mm.
But I'm assuming this is just in the experimental group. I could actually get the full text, but it would take me about 2 minutes, so I'm not gonna.
Hey, no one's gonna read it anyway. So
no one's listening to this shit.
Exactly.
Apart from the 2 guys that commented.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting. Like I said to you before we started recording the podcast, I work quite a lot in rehabilitation of players, and this is something we are going to look at with a couple of our knee rehab guys. So it'll be good to see this actually practically in action, because I've been aware of it for a while, but I've not actually used it. Yeah,
and I think this ties in with a lot of other stuff going on in research. I mean, there's a really, really good paper by Stewart Phillips' team, and it's called Low Load, High Volume Resistance Exercise Stimulates Muscle Protein Synthesis More Than High Load, Low Volume Resistance Exercise in Young Men. Now, when you couple this with some other research by guys like Schoenfeld, where basically, you know, it's about workload, you know, if you want to get bigger, you have to increase your workload, and if you have an equivalent amount of volume, it doesn't matter whether you do 10 sets of 3 or 3 sets of 10. Yeah. But of course, 3 sets of 10 is easier than 10 sets of 3.
So much easier.
Yeah. So what I find interesting is that this is actually kind of backing up a lot of the ideas of traditional bodybuilding training, which is, you know, higher reps, volume, going to failure. And this paper that I just mentioned there, now they're citing previous work which is suggesting that protein synthesis sort of maxes out at 6% of 1 RM. And, you know, even at low loads of 20%, you still get mixed protein synthesis, and they're talking about, you know, comparing different loads and volumes. So I think that the occlusion training ties into that nicely, because it's just showing you that when you have, you know, the right amount of volume, and you use the appropriate intensity, in this case, you know, the occlusion is a kind of intensity technique, even at low loads, you still get the same stimulus for growth. You don't necessarily have to be hammering yourself with 90% of 1 RM, you know, even, you know, 80% of 1 RM for reps, to get that sort of progression.
It's been common knowledge for some people for quite some time, like in the sports science.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at texts like Zadarsky's Science Practice Strength Training, I think it was originally written in the late 90s, but Zadarsky and most of his research comes from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, 80s, the Russian weightlifting system, sports systems. And if you look, they have like various tables, like there's the, can't remember the fucking name of it, but it basically tells you the zones you should train in. Like if you train at 9%, the optimal amount of sets, optimal amount of reps, optimal amount. So Perpin's table is called.
Yeah, I've seen that. I think I've seen that too.
Yeah, so that's purely for strength gains, but there's similar kind of things. Basically, they say that for our muscular hypertrophy, the important thing is volume of work done, actual mechanical workload. And they basically say the reason you use larger loads in training for muscular hypertrophy is because it is more efficient. So if we say like volume load, so sets times reps times load, so 3 sets of 10 at 100 kilos is 3,000 kilos. You could try and make that up with 30 kilos, but it's going to take a hell of a lot longer than if you do 3 sets of 10 at 100. So it's basically just a math game if you look at it that way. Like if you just look at the tonnage and the response you get from the tonnage, there's like a happy medium. That's why most bodybuilders tend to stay 8 to 12 reps for multiple sets, is because it works.
Yeah.
And it works efficiently. So some of the things I find fairly interesting is some of the work around like growth hormone response and like lower rest purely for hypertrophy, like lower rest periods, 60 to 90 seconds, low intensities like 40 to 50%, 60% of 1 RM, and just like bashing it. There's some studies showing that that's had a positive effect on muscular hypertrophy versus like a more traditional kind of 2-3 minute kind of rest protocol. Yeah, and that's associated with like rises in IGF-1, rises in growth hormone, and various other cascade hormones that most of which do fuck all, but there seems to be some mechanism there that if you take like lesser rest periods, it promotes hypertrophy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there'll be a number of things going on, like the actual cell swelling, actually growth factors in the cell as well. I don't really pretend to know all of the mechanisms. I don't think we conclusively know what's going on here. But the interesting thing that I found from this particular study, which again backs up what you were saying, which is that when you looked at 3 different groups here, they had one group which were training with 90% of their 1RM to failure, another group that were training 30% of 1RM to failure, and then they had a work match group, so they were using 30% of their 1RM but did the same work as the 90% 1RM group. Now, even though the protein synthesis was comparable, at 4 hours after exercising, actually after 24 hours, the guys who'd done the lower intensity, the 30% 1RM group, they had greater protein synthesis over 24 hours. It was elevated for longer. So I think that's an interesting thing to take home as well, when you're designing your training, because I think all it's really telling us is that, workload is what matters, but, fiber recruitment is, like you were saying, is important, but you need...
It's important for strength. It's not important for hypertrophy.
Yeah, exactly. So fiber recruitment is important, but it's also actually doing something once you've maximally recruited those fibers. You actually have to have some degree of failure, I think.
The recruitment patterns and those, that comes down to like rate coding, inter and intramuscular coordination, rate of force production. It's basically the skill of lifting.
Yeah, exactly.
So that ability to lift that. That's why for training for strength, anything under 80% is pretty much a waste of time, because it doesn't, if you just look at size, have you ever seen size principle?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at size principle, to get to the levels of activation we want for strength with a lesser load, so 75%, you need to do 10 reps of that percentage. If you ever done 3 sets of 10 at 75%, it's fucking hard. But it's only by the time you get to that third set, you've accumulated enough fatigue to actually get to the point where we're recruiting enough fibers, or we've put enough stress on the system that we're actually having the effect we want for strength.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas we train at 80%, 85%, and you don't even have to go anywhere near failure, but we can recruit enough with each set that we build up enough of that skill of that within the squad of firing the right motor units at the right time, firing them in the correct pattern, firing enough of them to make the skill of lifting that load easier. And then when that's too easy and that drops out of the 80% range, then you move up the weight. That's kind of something where I've come to in my training is I've done fucking God knows so much. Like, I've trained the failure every session, try to do more every session for one set. Basically 5-3-1, that wasn't 5-3-1, it was just me trying to do more. I've done a full linear periodization, which works, but it's fucking hard. And what I'm doing at the minute is I'm just lifting 3 times a week. And I don't do any more than doubles. I do a minimum of 6 sets, and I'll do it 3 times a week. I'm pretty much stronger than I've ever been, and my training's not as hard, nowhere near as hard as it has been in the past. And that's just following an approach where I'm just building up a volume of lifts in the correct percentages for strength gains. If I wanted to get bigger, then I'd do something similar, but I would do machines. I would do dumbbells. I would do 4 or 5 sets of 8 to 10 reps with 60 seconds in between. And I wouldn't lift heavy. I would just do a lot of it and move the weight up as I went. That's how I would approach hypertrophy. There's no real need for dog crap, that sort of method. There's no real need for it. As long as you're lifting with frequency, enough workload, increase the workload over time, eat the right amount of food, get enough protein, you'll grow. You take steroids, you'll grow faster. It's pretty much the long and short of it.
I think DC's an interesting one to bring up, because having tried that as well, what kills you is the systemic fatigue from just going to failure all the time. And you just don't build up the volume that you could if you were training at a lower intensity, but accumulating more workload.
You have to look at these programs as, am I natural or am I not natural?
Yeah.
Pretty much do, though. I mean, you can have good naturals. I could probably do dog crap for a while and get gains off it, but I'm going to fall off. Someone who's maybe less talented than me might fall off faster. So an endurance athlete would fall off after the first session. You can train. Basically, being on steroids is like being new to weights for a period of time. So if you're on it for 12 weeks, you're new to weights for 12 weeks. So you can do what a noob would do, which is go to failure and get stronger and get bigger, doing that training methodology for the period you're on it, until the part where the compounds are not having an effect anymore. In which case, you either come off or do more. It completely changes everything.
Or you can just take HMB,
which is better than steroids.
Which you can now get from Muscle Tech, if you wanna try that out. So I don't really have anything to add to that.
Nah.
So
it was a good chat. That's one thing I would like to bring up at some stage is the fitness industry and what the kind of image it presents to people versus what it actually is.
Yeah.
I think that would be a very interesting conversation. One for another day, perhaps. Right, question and answers from our wonderful, wonderful people on YouTube.
Yeah, we actually have some questions this time.
We're sitting on 230 views, which is more than one.
Yeah.
Thanks. 200 of them weren't me.
Yusuf's been hammering that video.
He's been F5ing the shit out of that. Cool. Right, so this is from Harrison. Hello, Harrison. We don't know who Harrison is, of course. What do you guys think about branding a wholly achievable physique as unrealistic because it is not what normal people look like? Unrealistic is often used in place of hard to achieve, in my opinion. That is IMO. Looking at someone being better than you at something and only being depressed by that is just a useless behavioral pattern. Cue adverts about normal is beautiful, by definition it can't be. Otherwise everyone would be. And if everyone was, there would be a new standard to what beautiful meant. Normal is normal. Is that a question?
It's a question followed by,
rhetorical answer.
Yeah, exactly. So Yeah, I mean, my take on that is, talking about what's wholly achievable, that's sort of subjective up to a point. I know what he's getting at, though, is that, a lot of people write off being able to achieve the sort of fitness model look because it's unrealistic, because, there's a lot of maybe drug use involved or whatever, or genetics. But yeah, if you work hard enough for long enough, you could probably achieve it. It's just not going to be achievable over, your summer cup. I think it is unhelpful to brand the physique as unrealistic up to a point. I think you do have to understand where your limits are when you train, for aesthetics, because you just have to face the facts that there are people who are genetically gifted, will gain muscle faster than you, will look bigger than you, they're structurally better than you, so even if you have the same amount of muscle, they still look better, they're naturally leaner than you, all these different things that they have going for them.
Fucking bastards.
Yeah. But yeah, the point he's making, I guess, is that you can maybe still get close to that if you work hard enough. And yeah, I totally buy into that. I just think unrealistic, is maybe a negative word to use, and yes, it's maybe defeatist. I understand the concept behind it, though, so I don't think it's necessarily helpful to call a physique unrealistic if it's achievable. It's just getting people to understand how you actually get there, letting them know that when you set your expectations at that level, it's going to take you maybe 5 years, 10 years to look like that. I think that's the problem, not necessarily whether or not the physique is achievable. It's having people know what it takes to get there.
I think, just chuck in my 2 cents, that it depends. This is contextual, as everything is contextual. If you're looking at Arnold Schwarzenegger, is that unachievable? You're fucking right, it's unachievable.
Yeah.
Unless you're willing to do what you got to do and you got the genetics for it, which you wouldn't, because if you were, you'd be Arnold Schwarzenegger or Ronnie Coleman or Kai Green. Grapefruit. That's one for all my bodybuilding fans. I mean, it depends on what your linchpin is and what you're comparing it to. I do honestly think that quite a lot of the things that are presented in the fitness industry are wholly unrealistic.
Yeah.
They take pictures of people in competition state. Anyone who's done a competition will know that is not a natural state. It takes a long time to get in that condition, and you don't stay in that condition for a long time. I do think that the fitness industry does set an unrealistic kind of ceiling for people. In the imagery they present to them in whey protein ads, supplement ads, it's not natural physique competitors that you'll see who are actually natural, because you wouldn't want to look at them. Because they're it's not to say you can't build an impressive physique naturally, but
yeah.
They might, the vast majority of what you see in magazines is not natural physique. It's that simple. And if you're unnatural looking at that, thinking that's realistic, well, I got bad news for your friend. It's not realistic. I totally agree with the point he's trying to drive home, that it's not a reason to get depressed. And, it's a negative attitude to think that it's unrealistic, you can't do anything about it. Totally agree with that. Just, it depends what you're talking about, though, as regards as what is unrealistic. And what he's saying about normal being beautiful, that's totally right. Normal is average, average is average, beautiful is beautiful, or else it wouldn't be beautiful. Yeah. So, I agree with what you're saying, just depends what you're talking about when you're saying unrealistic.
Yeah, and I think if you look at some of the top sort of natural guys in bodybuilding, who do have great genetics, obviously, and have put the work in. I look at someone like Jeff Alberts, who's one of the 3DMJ guys. He's been training for 20 years consistently, and he's still not quite where he wants to be. I mean, he's got a really great physique, but a lot of people would look at that and say, "Oh, that's unrealistic," because they're just looking at
20 years down the
line. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's looking at it's like looking at the before and after photos, not seeing what went between those two photos. All the hard work, all the training, and like you said, you look in a magazine, most people aren't natural, and yet when you look at a top natural guy who's been at at it for 20 years. That's still unachievable for most people simply because they're not willing to put the work in. So you've got to I think you have to set standard somewhere for what because most people aren't going to put 20 years of work into bodybuilding unless that's their passion. So you've got to
set... If you're being honest about it, like, Brad Pitt in Fight Club is unrealistic for most people because they won't have the dedication to get that lean.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not going to happen, so it's unrealistic. The sort of person that gets on the sort of conditions we're talking about wouldn't be swayed by this kind of advertising anyway.
Yeah.
The sort of person that would get up and do it themselves. So if it's realistic for you, you probably wouldn't, you'd probably be doing it anyway, for the most part.
Yeah, or, just eat clean, train hard.
Came like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I always find natural bodybuilding to be like a strange hobby of people. Yeah. Well, maybe another one for another time.
Yeah, we can get into that.
But yeah, fair fucking play to you. A lot of hard work goes into it. I ain't in. Yeah, so and then Marstar, what up Marstar? The other guy who commented on the video. That HMB study is an absolute joke. 6 kg lean mass gains, all kinds of gains, body fat loss, 200% strength increase. Would a steroid do this in a similar time frame? Maybe it wouldn't. And if you don't see similar results, well, it's because it requires a super intense, mega high tech, undulating accommodation intensification program requiring 200% maximum. Shout out to T-Nation. So yeah, like Ben replied to this guy saying that was it Muscle Tech?
Yeah, it's Muscle Tech.
Or coming out, you go ahead.
Yeah, so they just released. It's funny, off the back of this study, they've just released an HMB FA supplement.
Someone called that, man. Someone might have called that shit.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you heard it here first. It's probably the only time you'll be ahead of the curve on supplement developments.
I'm the curve, boy.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, it is a fucking joke because, if you select people and then you weed out the ones that you want to participate in the study, you really, you don't just take whoever meets the criteria, you actually sort of filter them out based on who's going to get the results based on all the rhetoric. But you're bound to get some anomalous results like this, and it's obvious that it has more to do with the training and the mentality of the people who were selected for the study than it has to do with the supplement. Of course, a lot of people are trying to say, well, yeah, it's HMB actually helps you train harder, it supports your training, and that's how it works. But I honestly, do you think that's worth paying, 30, 40 quid for? I don't think so.
Nope. Or they could have been eating, training, cleaning hard, and taking HMB at the same time.
Exactly. For twice the gains, yeah.
All the gains. Okay. So any further questions or comments on the YouTube would be very much appreciated. Always great to have that. You can send your emails into healthfitsuccess@gmail.com. That is healthfit, F-I-T, success, all one word, @gmail.com. Our blog is healthfitsuccess.blogspot.com. I've got a URL on my website, www.castironstrength.com, to these episodes if you want to go and have a look at them. Still haven't got a solution for posting them online, but we'll look into that and get that sorted. I've been Marquise.
And I've been Ben Tormey.
Until next time, eat, train, clean hard, take some of that HMB.
And stay mad.
Stay mad. Oh, you so mad.